The dispute centres on the provision of prefabricated sheds as amenities blocks at the Vales Point, Raring and Munmora power stations. The tradesmen, members of 8 different unions, say they are too hot and dusty and lack washing facilities. Following yesterday's sackings and stand-downs, a meeting of other workers this morning decided on an indefinite strike. Upper Hunter workers were to meet late today.
Contractors asked people would they use the smoko huts. Some contractors used the tactic that if the employee said no because they had a ban on them, they stood them down. Other contractors called them in. The same question was put to the individuals, and then they were told, when they told their employees they couldn't use them, they then said, there is no further employment, you are now terminated.
The Electricity Commission says the strike action is not affecting the provision of electricity, as the maintenance work is on equipment removed from service for long-term rehabilitation. Meanwhile, the Commission has reached agreement with county councils on the transfer of the 132 kilovolt distribution system. There'll be no sackings or forced retrenchments, with surplus staff not wanting to join a county council being redeployed within the Commission.
The cycleway stretches from the waterfront at Spews Point Park to Warners Bay High School. Until now, construction has progressed without too many problems. But a proposal to build the cycleway along Fairfax Road and into Metcalfe Street has residents concerned.
We support the idea of a cycleway. We don't support the idea of routing the children into the most dangerous street in Warners Bay.
The residents claim council has not considered the safety of the children in directing the cycleway through 2 main roads and this medium strip.
Why do you think they chose this street?
Because it was cheap, a cheap option.
Mayor of Lake Macquarie, Ivan Welsh, agrees the section is a hazard.
And I can see as clearly as anybody can that it is dangerous, but some of the argument that's being put forward is very emotional.
After meeting the residents yesterday, council agreed to stop work on the project and review the planned route. But this morning, work continued, and when residents complained, the police were called in.
The contractor rang the police, and the police come around, and I think he was using standover tactics to us.
The cycleway route was recommended to council 10 years ago by the Roads and Traffic Authority, and in that time has never been reviewed. Monday night's meeting will be the first time council has examined the planned path.
I've asked that they review it because I can see the point that the residents are making. Now, if council, when they review it, don't change their mind, then it will continue.
Late this afternoon, the Newcastle Cycleways Association gave their support to the planned route and condemned council's decision to stop work on the project. Jodie McKay for NBN News.
The government says it's determined to bring the SRA's massive debt into line, but in doing so is paying a price in the public relations field. Part of the strategy is to scrap underutilised services, and according to the SRA, in Newcastle that applies to quite a few stations. City Rail manager John Zantiotis has to try to turn around a system which is losing $15 million a year. Part of his solution is to replace trains with buses on lines that now carry only a few people. From March this year, trains will no longer run from Fassifern to Toronto. That hasn't proved a popular move, but it's plans for later in the year which could really cause the SRA headaches. According to the manager, many of the smaller stations between Fassifern and Broadmeadow are underutilised, and the services should be cut back or abolished. If the SRA presses ahead with closing Burragul station, however, the locals there have made it clear it won't be without a fight.
We'll all be very distressed about it. It'd be most inconvenient, most inconvenient.
And as if the local residents didn't already have an uphill battle, then there was the earthquake. The waiting room and booking office, which stood here, were badly damaged and had to be totally demolished. The locals are very doubtful that they're ever going to be rebuilt. The SRA says a bus service will be provided if the trains are cut out, but that doesn't placate the locals.
Well, it's going to take an hour and a half for a start, they told us. So I don't know.
How long does it take by train?
20 minutes, 25, half an hour at the most.
The SRA, however, says buses will take just 10 minutes longer than the fastest train service. In opposing the cutbacks, the residents also point out that a new subdivision will be built nearby next year. State Rail says that if the service is cut back, it can always be reviewed if demand warrants it. Rosshampton, NBN News.
Claude Ellerington has been playing the pokies at Belmont 16-footers every fortnight for 25 years. For the last 12 months he's played only this machine, and yesterday Megabucks came up with 5 lucky sevens.
Were you surprised to win that much?
Oh, Jesus, yeah. Fell off the bloody chair.
The $74,000 payout is by far Claude's biggest win, and one of the biggest ever in Newcastle and Lake Macquarie. The 79-year-old pensioner says he'll spend the money on his 3 granddaughters and maybe replace his 12-year-old Holden. But for Claude, this good fortune is a sign to give the pokies away. Each month, Belmont 16-footers gross $400,000 on the one-armed bandits. And even jackpot winner Claude says it's a tough game.
I don't think I'll square.
You're behind?
I think so. Had a rough guess. You're never in front gambling.
Demolishers faced a dilemma. They had to bring down a fractured lift well and linking floors without damaging the adjoining York and North wings. The biggest problem was the unstable 100-ton concrete slab capping the lift tower. If it fell on the north wing, it would irreparably damage the historic building. Demolishers hoped to drag the slab sideways, bringing it down through the linking floors. The first attempt was a partial success. The slab had fractured before falling, but demolishers were satisfied it no longer threatened the historic buildings.
We had planned to break the lift motorroom structure to the south so it couldn't go to the north, and we were hoping it would stay as an integral slab and slide to the south. That didn't happen, unfortunately, but in hindsight is still a much better situation than we did have. It is locked to the south, it can't go north now.
With the teetering structure now more insecure, workers clambered back onto the slab to tie more lines and at least settle it onto the upper floors. This effort was successful. The remainder of the lift well will be demolished tomorrow morning. Ironically, the limited demolition was accompanied by protests, not from conservationists, but from those who couldn't see what the fuss was about. Talkback radio shows were hard-pressed to hear from anyone who wanted the North Wing saved at all.
I certainly believe that a lot of Newcastle should be taken down, particularly I think the earthquake did us all a treat in a way, and certainly an opportunity to rebuild a city.
However, Hospital Chief Executive Stephen Batt says his administrators are not barbarians and the wings will stay intact until the National Trust has assessed them.
The National Trust representatives will be up on Monday many groups, as you know, we've shown through the buildings over the past few weeks, and really this is the first opportunity since we've had approval to actually go and do some work to make safe the whole area in the York Wing area and the linkways between the North and York Wing.
Whatever the future of the wings, Mr Batt says one thing is certain: they will never again play a part in the Hunter Area Health Service.
It's a regular occurrence for police attending alarm calls, most of which prove to be nothing at all.
And they tell me that they're getting probably on an average 10 to 12 alarms per day, and it would appear about 90% or more of those are false alarms.
A $200 fine is proposed for industrial and commercial property owners should police attend more than one false alarm there in any 28-day period. Although the new legislation should mean extra business for security firms, with owners transferring alarm calls to them, the security companies are questioning what police mean by false alarms.
It's very difficult to define a false alarm. In the event of alarms going off for storms or for rodents, in fact, a detector is picking up what it's supposed to pick up, movement.
Alarms such as these can be activated by a plague of moths or simple movement from Christmas decorations. But police have put the onus firmly on the shoulders of property owners, describing a false alarm as the activation of a security device for any reason other than the intrusion or attempted intrusion of a person. Police say the charges are not only to save resources, but also to encourage regular maintenance of security devices. The plan follows a fire brigade initiative. 3 months ago, a $200 charge was introduced for repeated calls to faulty alarm systems.
Members of the Federal Task Force for the Hunter met officials from CSA, which already has a small base in Newcastle working on the F-18s and flight simulator. The company has signed a $100 million contract with Amicon for shore facilities to be built in New South Wales. Now they are expecting more contracts, including one for work to be undertaken in Newcastle.
The next contract is to do with automatic test equipment, which will definitely be done in Newcastle. Overall, we'd pick that to be about a $40 million contract, which will be spread out over a number of years, although typically that form of work goes on for the whole life of the ships, so you're working on it for probably the next 30 or 40 years.
It's hoped work will start later this year, first employing around 50 people, then building up to around 150, including local graduates.
In fact, we've already given a number of jobs to graduates from Newcastle University over the years, but moved them primarily to Sydney. We're keen to bring the work to where the people come from. Typically, we'd take on about 30 graduates in computer sciences and engineering a year. Certainly, we would expect to feed our organisation here in Newcastle from the local university.
And Mr Johnson believes the site near the university would be ideal for the company, which could act as a catalyst for other high-tech industries.
The example that we've talked about earlier today about in Adelaide, where I think we're the third company that went into the Adelaide Technology Park. 4 years later, there's 47 companies clustered around us. The same experience is shown overseas. I think unquestionably you get a couple of companies that are seen as being leaders in the field. Other companies tend to cluster with them. Sharing staff, sharing ideas, and subcontracting work from each other. In fact, it's attractive to us to be grouped with other high technology companies.
The Workers' Club is still far from reconstruction after the earthquake, but already club officials are looking for new opportunities to expand facilities for members. Even before the disaster, club officers were considering an expansion, but opportunities for land were limited. The demolition of a section of the Hunter Water Board's neighbouring depot has them thinking in a new direction. The Water Board is reluctant to announce premature plans for the 5,400 square metre site, except to say that the location isn't considered appropriate as a garage for its vehicles. The Workers' Club says speculation into the possible acquisition of the block is still too early, but the opportunity is an attractive one. In any case, the Water Board says that if and when it decides to sell off the site, the block will be placed on the open market for all comers. In the meantime, the Trades Hall is returning to normal, reopening for business this morning after extensive repairs, although many unions are still operating from temporary premises. About 50 miners gathered at Singleton Council chambers to meet the Premier before he left on the next leg of his tour. The Premier took the protest head-on, saying he could only give the miners a minute of his time. It turned out to be longer. The miners, many carrying retrenchment notices handed out today, wanted the Premier to use his influence to encourage other mines to employ them as they were progressively retrenched from the Hebden mine over the next 12 months. The Premier stopped short of agreeing, but sounded sympathetic.
I'm perfectly happy to see if there's any pressure I can bring to see the jobs that are here to stay in with the fellas. I've got no argument with that at all.
The Premier departed, leaving mining unions feeling that more could have been achieved.
Partially satisfied. He seems to keep wanting to harp on the fact that we've agreed that Elcom has done the right thing. I don't believe Elcom has totally done the right thing, because I think there should have been some promise of jobs for these guys that are going to be able to work, 200 odd families. I don't really believe he has addressed that problem. He's trying to sidetrack it.
Hebden Colliery is a private company which for 20 years has successfully tendered to mine Elcom coal. This year, their bid was too high. Mine management says it doesn't know the winning contract price tendered by the Narama Group. However, it's thought the tender was attractive because the Narama mines, which include Drayton, Bayswater and Howick, were offering export quality coal with which Hebden couldn't compete. When Hebden completes its contract in 12 months, it's unlikely the coal reserves there will be touched for at least 10 years. The company hopes some of its 200 employees will be absorbed by the coal industry's current boom, while others will find work with the Narama mines when they take over the Elcom contract in 3 years. The Premier's visit wasn't all confrontation. His first duty was a visit to Singleton High School, where he officially opened the school's computer complex. He expressed admiration for the school's fundraising efforts to equip the $150,000 computer centre through public donations and company sponsorship. The school's efforts were rewarded by the Department of Education, which recognises Singleton High as a centre for excellence in computer studies.
The state government wants motorists to swap roads for rail. Upon production of a driver's licence today, passengers were given a free ride on off-peak services in the City Rail network. The idea is to attract new customers to a system currently running with a 30% occupancy rate. Rail authorities hope drivers will be more inclined to take the train after today's promotion. City Rail says the one-off event is part of an aggressive marketing plan to attract more off-peak business. And for many regular train travellers, today's offer was an unexpected bonus.
I didn't know anything about it till last night. I was wanting to pay my fare and then someone said, well, if you're going, just show your licence. I was quite surprised.
We're only travelling because we have to go to a meeting in Sydney this afternoon, but I think it's a good idea.
We've still got a car, but for long tripping, you know, we would rather the train than go in our car.
Local State Rail Chief John Zantiotis reports intercity services were the main winner today, with the 908 Sydney-bound train fully loaded by Broadmeadow. In an era of rail cuts, today's promotion gave the State Rail Authority a much-needed boost in public relations.
The image isn't great, I guess, but
So I'm quite happy with them today when we go for free.
The entire Gosford ambulance fleet rushed to evacuate those overcome by the fumes after an accident in the laboratory involving a highly volatile chemical. The factory's product manager, Ken Stallard, said he and other staff smelt the vapour and ordered all 170 employees out the building. The chemical ethyl mercaptan is an odorising agent used in the manufacture of bottle gas. Staff in the research and development laboratory had been transferring a small amount of the material when suddenly vapours escaped and more than 20 of them were overcome by the fumes. The fire brigade says a small amount of the chemical had been used to test a leaking instrument, which had malfunctioned a number of occasions before today's accident. The instrument, a chemical transfer gun, was tested again today, this time with the ethyl mercaptan, with adverse results. Staff were treated with oxygen and the fire brigade was called in as a precaution. Police will continue investigations tonight.
Residents of the area who rely on the train have been stirred into action, pressing for the retention of the two-car diesel set, but to no avail. The last service will run at 19 minutes past midnight on the 11th of March and will be replaced by buses from 6 o'clock on the same morning. Today, the Executive Director of the Transport Department, Richard Fleming, announced a task force to examine the transport needs of the people in the West Lakes area. It will consist of representatives of government departments, councils, bus companies, the Commuter Council, the Hunter Transport Improvement Association and City Rail itself. The task force will hold its first meeting on this coming Tuesday and public submissions are invited.
Although a relatively low-key affair, today's announcement by Minerals and Energy Minister Neil Pickard carries enormous implications for both the power generation and coal industries. Only 1/50th the output of a giant power station like Bayswater, the 50-megawatt station to be built adjacent to the Gunnedah mine can nevertheless supply about 2/3 the electricity needs of the Namoy Valley. More importantly, it's the first time a privately owned station has been allowed to feed into the state grid. Of even more significance, though, is the way the station will be fuelled. Using technology developed by Japan's Giant Electric Power Development Company, the Gunnedah generating plant will burn coal sludge mixed with water. That sounds simple enough, but the technology has been elusive, and this is the first power station in the world to use the unique system. Burning what is normally regarded as waste has both a cost advantage and solves a massive environmental problem.
Electricity consumers in New South Wales will have now here a power station using waste products at no cost to them, but still providing power at the cheapest price on mainland Australia, as we're doing now.
The station will cost its consortium owners about $80 million, and an international finance package is currently being arranged. No date has yet been set for construction to start, but when the station is running, it will employ around 50 people.
Four months ago, Singleton Shire Council approved the controversial Rix's Creek mine. Last night, yet another open-cut mine for the area was given the go-ahead. The Camberwell Coal Project will be constructed 8 kilometres northwest of the town and immediately north of Rix's Creek. The mine, which is a joint Australian and Japanese venture, will produce 500,000 tonnes of export coal a year and will employ around 250 people. Council received 16 submissions from landowners opposing the mine. However, after talks with the Camberwell company, Council is confident those environmental concerns will be dealt with and compensation given to the affected farmers. A final decision on the mine will be made in the next month by Planning Minister David Hay. Jodie McKay for NBN News.